Am Uyosa, a co-director of Shift Press. Shift Press is a local media organization that provides journalism and journalism training that encourage Houston youth civic engagement. With that mission, we provide trainings like this, often at no cost to you. So I want to say thank you for giving us your time, this hour and a half of such a very important topic. To stay in conversation, please subscribe to our newsletter. It's easy for us to talk through to you rather than through rather than through any social media platform. If you really want to support this work, please do drop a couple dollars at shift.press/donates. Um, this recording will be shared after the webinar. Give us about a day to get that up. Um, and lastly, I want to say that this is in webinar format, but this is very much a discussion, right? So please do head to that the questions area and have those questions put those questions in. If you have any stories that you want to share, you're also welcome to do so in those areas. You're also able to share your stories anonymously as well, I believe through the Q&A function. We will get to all of them during a Q&A portion of the conversation, so don't feel like we're not engaging it immediately. We just have so much content we have to talk about. Um, so with that, I do want to pass the mic to our first speaker, Melissa, to take us through such an important webinar.
Thank you, Yosa. And I want to take this time to also thank you and Shift Press for first publishing our op-ed and giving us the opportunity to do the webinar. When we first started thinking of the op-ed, we knew that it was going to draft some attention, but we didn't expect for it to explode as it has, which is very telling because we know that this conversation is very much needed about nonprofits and about workers' rights and what you should be knowing as you're entering these spaces. So I am thankful for that. So to introduce myself, my name is Melissa Ayala. I use she, they pronouns. I was born and raised in Houston, Texas. And my background for the past almost 10 years has been in government and nonprofit spaces, which includes serving on boards. I am a policy and advocacy strategist. And currently, I am a co founder and president for Cowries Lucky Star Foundation, which is a nonprofit that we created in honor of my brother that was murdered last year. So let's go ahead and get into it. Um, to start with why we're here, I want to provide some context. What made us write this op-ed? And I have to take you guys back to last year, June 2024. Um, that was a time where I was resigning from my position and I was kind of fed up with how things went. Um, so I had approached Moise in August and said, hey, we need to do something in order to let folks know, like, hey, we need to be having more dialogue. We need to be engaging as to what folks should be knowing about nonprofit. Um, and the one reoccurring theme that we kept saying over and over again is, I wish I would have known this when I was younger. And that is the truth. I, going back 10 years ago, really would have wanted to have known all this information about, my benefits in Texas. And so we did what we do best. We started writing. And it was later that we approached Uyosa and Shift Press to see if they would be our publishers, and they did. And so now we are here today. And I am thankful for Louise for being in that space and helping get through this op-ed. And I'm really thankful for all of y'all being here because we have gotten so much positive feedback. We can get to the next slide. And really our goal is to, just educate the young workforce that's going into nonprofit space. You know, a lot of folks just graduated from college and they are trying to go somewhere. And typically, a lot of folks are going into nonprofit. Um, but this is a way for us to make you guys aware on the ways that nonprofits exploit workers and for you to know your rights because oftentimes the likelihood of you being violated of your rights is high. We get to the next slide, please. And our intention for this webinar is a call to action, and you guys will be hearing more about that later. But essentially, what we want y'all to take out of here is for folks to start really having conversations with those nonprofit agencies and letting them know that, hey, this is not okay. And we have another panelist that will also be discussing that. So we'll save that for a little bit. Next slide. Now, all the information that we are going to share today, the value of it isn't just for nonprofit. It really is for all jobs. Even if you're going into the public sector, the private sector, whatever sector you're going for, this information is also valuable for you. And it's the basic knowledge of workers' rights. We could technically have written a book about this, but we wanted to keep it short and sweet because that's how we get everybody's attention. But more so, 1 in 20 Texas workers end up working in nonprofits. So for us, we thought that this information was especially valuable. No one panelist in this webinar is representing an organization. We are here on our own accord. Moise and I, the authors of this op-ed, and then we do have somebody that's worked in management, and then currently somebody else that is also working in another nonprofit. But we are here today representing ourselves, and this information comes from experience. And if you guys have read the op-ed, which I'm hoping you have, you guys will be able to get more information from that. But to bring it all to just one thing, these conversations need to keep happening. It's not a one-off conversation. Even after this webinar, I hope that this creates more dialogue so that we can continue not only talking about this conversation, but other conversations that interweb with what we are talking about. Next slide, please. And then I'll kick it off to Moise.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Melissa, and thank you and WIOSA as well for just making this event happen. Quick intro for me. Hey, everybody, my name is Moise Akhtar. My pronouns are they, them. I'm currently a journalist, but I've, like Melissa, I've spent a lot of almost like the last decade of my career working in nonprofits, campaigns, academia, and so also really been around the block and seen a lot of nonsense in my time. So I'm hoping this webinar will be enlightening for y'all and also something maybe y'all feel like your experiences are being represented. But yeah, one of the big things we want to talk about is pay transparency. So as some of y'all probably know, or some of y'all maybe are getting to know, pay for nonprofits is usually really low. There's different reasons for why. Some of these reasons are structural, like most nonprofits have a budget of like $1 million or less. Spread that out among a lot of staff or some staff, and it usually does mean there's a lot of constraints. It's also because nonprofits are usually reliant on donations, right, and grant funding, and that can be very conditional. Grants that are available one year may not be available the next year. So there are structural reasons for why nonprofits only have so much money and on average maybe pay less than the private sector. However, it is also true that that nonprofits will sell themselves as passion work that you should be grateful to work in, that you're making a huge difference in your community, and so maybe you don't really need to be paid very well. To that point, next slide, please, WIOSA. This kind of like also on the point on donors and foundations, I think it's also true that especially what we're seeing right now with the federal government trying to discipline nonprofits, I think nonprofits also operate in a space of constraints, right? Where it's like, there might be grants, for example, for civic engagement work, but there might not be grants for, say, legal defense, if that's something your org is interested in. So oftentimes an org might be constrained of what it can do, and then like if it does things that maybe donors and foundations aren't happy with, that can lead to repercussions. But next slide, please. I'll pass it back to Melissa for the millennial cringe.
Yeah, sorry, y'all. When we were doing these slides, we definitely had a visual kind of mindset with it. I'm very much a visual person, but something that you really want to take a look at and be mindful of is the gaslighting that a lot of folks do. Next slide, please. So as the day after actually that the op-ed was published, I was looking at different job postings, and this is something that I found, and I thought it was really interesting. And let me try to read it as best as I can. But this is for compensation and hours, and this says this is a full-time position. Whatever culture is hard driving and highly collaborative. And then it basically hones in as, saying that this is passion work that, they basically, you're looking at 40 to 45 hours worth of a work week. They want to ensure that you are doing this out of passion. And that's language that you guys need to be looking at when it comes to job postings, because just because yes, you can be passionate about it, but pay me. And, I hope that you guys will look at LinkedIn or Glassdoor or anything like that to ensure that, your skills and the position that you're kind of looking at kind of matches with that same pay. So don't let them gaslight you into being exploited, because that is not okay. And I'll go ahead and pass it back to Louise.
Yeah, so kind of on that note, it's something that, so just to give like a quick personal example, it's also important to kind of like really just take a look at, we also, next slide, please. Know that you can do your own due diligence. Like you can look into nonprofits finances. You can usually find them on the IRS's website, or there's a more accessible form of that on ProPublica's Nonprofit Explorer. But using that information, also look at stuff like, there's websites like Glassdoor, Indeed, and whatnot. Really do your homework when you look at any job and whatnot, because once you do come face to face with management, you're interviewing for a job, it can give you a better sense like of what you're coming against, right? Because oftentimes organizations, and this isn't exclusive to nonprofits, will always try to lowball you. But knowing, for example, that say this organization has a budget of like 10 million as opposed to say 1 million will make you think like, maybe they should be paying me more. I mean, they could always be paying you more, but just for reference. Next slide, please. I'll pass it back to Melissa, but real quick, I'll share a quick anecdote. So at my last nonprofit job, they lowballed me and kind of like, I found out later on, we're trying to give me the minimum of like the salary tier I was at. So then I negotiated and they were willing to give me more. But if I hadn't asked, it wasn't that much more, but every little bit counts. So it's like, know that you should always try. And and that can lead to maybe better benefits, better pay within this, within the range that they're willing to offer. Yeah.
Yeah, so whenever I look at a job posting, I definitely look at benefits. Now, the sad thing about benefits in Texas is that there's no legal requirement for employers to provide PTO. Sad. Texas, really, need to do better. And benefits are essentially an illusion, and burnout is definitely real. A lot of you, if you've worked in nonprofit, you understand that. Even in other jobs, burnout is a huge thing. It's a really big health issue in the nonprofit sector. But the most important thing out of that is for you to protect your own mental and physical health. It is very, very important that you keep that at the forefront. Never put yourself at the back burner, because that quickly leads to your health deteriorating. And that's also something that I could say not, yes, in my previous job, but in different roles as well. I saw that me, myself, and I was quickly getting burnt out. Um, and, you know, I picked up different hobbies. I love Star Wars and I love Legos. So one thing that I do is I just buy a set and, you know, a cheap set because, you know, Lego is expensive. But, you know, I started doing that to kind of occupy my mind and make it go, but also to focus on something that isn't related to work or pick up a book or, you know, probably try to go out and do something. I don't know, touch grass. Um, and that way it kind of helps you decompress and release some of that stress from burnout. Now, I know this isn't the antidote for everyone, but it is for me, and I definitely implore everyone to make sure that you are at the top whenever you are talking about benefits and burnout. So next slide, please. Transparency. This is a really huge thing, and I will say that at my previous employment, transparency was the biggest thing for me. And for me, the dissatisfaction in transparency is the biggest thing that will make you as an employee start losing faith in that organization. It's a foundation of trust. And it also helps you as an employee have that morale that you are actually doing a great job to serve the community. And it also helps you with the alignment of the values of the organization rather than operating in secrecy. For me, the last organization that I was at did not provide transparency. And it, you know, it wasn't just with, you know, my supervisor, but it was also with like board and, you know, other people who have previously been connected with that organization. And for me, you know, if you're not being very transparent, then you're not giving me the trust that I should be seeing. And how can I operate in any way that will be conducive for both myself, the organization, or for the community? So it is very, very important that our organization have transparency not only with their employees, but also the community. Next slide. This is definitely a hot topic, DEI struggle, the exclusivity of inclusivity. And what we meant by this was that currently there is a huge pushback, particularly in Texas, for DEI initiatives. And we see that all around. It's not just in Texas, but in a lot of other states, there have been, you know, a lot of efforts to ensure that DEI initiatives are basically, you know, being taken away from the public, where it really benefits. And particularly here in Texas, there were several bills that were filed during the legislative session that aimed to ban DEI initiatives. And all of them were filed by Republicans. So that is definitely a hot topic to engage state legislators and ask them like, hey, what's going on? It's definitely something that we as people of color need to be advocating for. And I know that there was recently I believe a lawsuit that's being filed by an organization, I think, and I know USL will be able to correct me, but there was an article that Chip Press had done on that. But you know, DEI isn't just a box to check. It's more than that. Whenever you start seeing DEI initiatives or DEI just in general lacking in a nonprofit, it's very telling. And I think for me, when I see an organization's board not inclusive of who they say they're going to represent in the community, it's very questionable. And for me, if you're going to advocate about it, then you better be about it. And I really think that that's something that you just kind of have to move forward with in order to ensure that you definitely are serving who you're saying that you are. And Louise, I know you wanted to say something about that third to last point right there.
I'll just be really quick and say, I think oftentimes, especially in organizations that are serving, say, marginalized communities and claiming to speak that on behalf of those communities, right? I think what can often happen is, right, you know, especially when they're trying, they need to like apply for a certain grant and get certain kinds of community buy-in, that organizations will claim that they speak for, say, the Asian American community or the Latino community. But then what ends up happening, at least from my own experiences, and I think Melissa could speak to this too, is that they really only speak to, say, specific subsets of this community when it comes to, say, certain ethnic groups, certain class groups, maybe really educated folks, so on and so forth. So I think something a lot of organizations don't really grapple with is the fact that they don't really represent the communities they claim to speak for. And I think this leads to both blind spots, but also messes with the work they're trying to do. Back to Melissa.
Yeah, pretty much Louise said everything I had to say as well. We can go to the next slide, please. Now we want to talk about some big red flags. So Louise, go ahead and take it over.
Yeah, here's the spicy stuff. And this is really just like, especially for some of y'all who might be just coming into the workforce for the first time or you're going through your first few jobs. I think this is just us really wanting to emphasize again, the really nitty gritty stuff. So like when you see a job description, you're applying for a job, you're looking for a job, as unfortunately many of us are on a regular basis, right? It's like, what are the responsibilities? Is it vague? Is it broad? Does it have salary info? Like, is it using buzzwords or is it being specific? Do your research on like most organizations nowadays have websites. They might even have like some of the bigger ones might have Wikipedia pages. Do your research. And if you see things like the website looks outdated, there's no information about leadership or staff, take note of these things. It's not always the case that, you know, like certain things on a company's website will make it seem like, oh, okay, this is like not a place to work at. But usually it can be telling that an organization is trying to hide something if they're not disclosing certain details. Look at bad reviews, see if they've been involved in any lawsuits. And I think fundamentally, I think like I would say also make sure to reach out to people that work at the org. You can usually find folks who work at an org through LinkedIn, or even like if it's a community org, you kind of learn through doing community stuff, like at an event. Maybe even just be ask them like, hey, what's it like in a role? I think one thing to know about nonprofit workers is we love cheeseman, we love to talk within confidentiality and trying to protect their job. So I think people are willing to look out for each other. I think it's just a matter of you doing your due diligence from even before you enter the door to interview. Next slide. And so when you interview, remember it's very cheesy advice that you're also interviewing the workplace, right? Like, so say you're in your situation, and I've been in this too, where it's like they're bad mouthing their coworkers, or they're almost just like they're not paying attention. They didn't seem to prepare for the interview. They don't answer questions forthrightly. That's all. Those are all red flags that you should note and maybe consider like that this might not be the workplace for you. It may be the case also that you're juggling that maybe you don't have that many options, you're looking for a job, but no, also it's important to trust your gut that if you're feeling bad about a job now, it's more than likely that you're going to notice more and more red flags down the line. And that leads to our next slide. And I'll pass it back to Melissa.
Yeah, so I'm not going to go through all of this, but we did want to share some things that you definitely want to take note during your 3 months and 6 months and when you're in with a nonprofit or, you know, whatever organization that you do end up with. We will be sharing these slides. So like I said, I'm not going to go through these just for sake of time. And I want to be respectful to the other panelists. Go ahead and do the next slide, please. But what is a young Texas nonprofit worker to do? There are some anecdotes, and next slide, please. Document everything. make sure that you very much are keeping track. Documentation is everything. If you have proof of things that are happening in the workplace that aren't sitting well with you, take note of it. Legit, either do like a Google Doc or something, some kind of journal where you're writing things down. Communicate carefully, and what we mean by that is whether it's with your supervisor or the director of HR, make sure that you're putting things in email as opposed to just having these open conversations with them. Know your rights regarding retaliation. It's illegal under federal law, however, it still happens. Definitely happened at my last job. And know about whistleblower protections because they do exist. Set boundaries, that is very important. Set that from the very beginning and make sure that if people try crossing that, that you redirect them. When to seek professional help, and what we mean by this is that if you need to talk to somebody because there's a lot of stress in the workplace, by all means go. Therapy is never a bad thing for anybody. So just know when to trust yourself and your body. And then advocate for systemic and organizational change. We're talking about nonprofit as a whole, but there are smaller and bigger conversations that can come out of this. Next slide, please. And then worst case scenario, you are able to file complaints. Now, the only thing about this right now is that with the current administration, we don't know how some of these departments are kind of going, in what direction they're going, if they'll be available or not. But in the meantime, they are available. And the easiest way for you to do that is on a federal level. It only takes you making a complaint for something to kind of go into action. On a state level, for example, if you're noticing that your wage and hours are being violated, you can contact the Texas Workforce Commission. However, it would require that you and all your coworkers do that, where as opposed to if you went to the Department of Labor and you made a complaint, it would only need to be you. And again, make sure you document everything, whether it's an email or when you submitted said complaint, make sure that you are documenting everything. Unsafe working conditions. Let's say that there's a hoarding situation in the room. OSHA is who you would contact. Discrimination or harassment. You can file that with the EEOC or again with the Texas Workforce Commission Civil Rights Division. Document everything. I'm going to harp on that so much. You need to be documenting everything. If you want to make a complaint, make sure that you have enough information, even if it's testimony from like your coworkers. Ensure that you are gathering evidence so that when you do present it, it goes through and you're able to successfully file this. Next slide. So this is all for our portion, but we are always open to engaging with you. So we will be asking Lujyosa to please share our slides if you guys want more information, or if you guys just want to connect with us, then we are more than open for you to email us. I myself, I'll be speaking for myself, but if you guys want to look me up on LinkedIn or even on Instagram, which my handle is actually on the op-ed, you guys are more than welcome to reach out to me that way. But other than that, we're going to go ahead and pass it on to Janet to talk about management.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Louise. Wow, just such a presentation full of such sexy words like documentation, gaslighting, passion work, retaliation, communication, DEI, transparency, burnout. All things that either really gave me a reminder of past traumas and experiences and things that we're still fighting for. And so I'm really excited to share with y'all sort of my experiences within the nonprofit space and what it has looked like for me, at least, to be in spaces where I experienced and was an actor of bad management, and where I've been in spaces where been managed and was a manager in what I felt was very healthy management. And but before doing that, let me quickly introduce myself. Again, my name is Janet Namkung. My pronouns are she, they. I was born and raised in New York City, then spent a decade in DC, in Houston a couple of years, and just recently moved to Denver. And so in my time in DC, I worked a decade on focus on Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander nonprofit advocacy work, ranging everything from programs to fundraising to operational work, as well as policy organizing. And so, and just a fun fact about me, I'm a parent of 4 girls, our 3 dogs and 1 cat, and that's sort of just our bundles of joy that we have in our family. And I want to name that, just to reiterate that, Melissa shared that none of us are representing a singular entity or an organization, but more so here to share our experiences. So with that said, I want to take y'all on a small journey about sort of what little Janet to big Janet's journey's been like when it comes to management. And so as a young child, as a first, a child of immigrants, the first child, the first daughter, I experienced seeing my parents running small businesses, and really got to observe their management styles during that time. I was both able to experience what good management looked like, but also what bad management looked like. And you kind of, even as a young person who also, worked at their parents' businesses, even as a kid, um, got to experience those in a way I was like, oh, okay, this is how people respond to these types of things, especially when the folks that they employed were also mostly immigrants and from diverse backgrounds. So you kind of, that was sort of my first small steps in experiencing what that looks like. And, as I got older into high school and college, I took on leadership roles, whether it was clubs or groups within the school to lead different activities or folks to lead different protests or campaigns within the school as well. And really, as I graduated college, my first venture out and accepting my very first full-time job was working with AmeriCorps and Triple C. So I was chosen to be a team leader where I was based in the Southwest region, actually based here in Denver. And from there, I was pulled in to lead a group of anywhere from 8 to 12 folks, ranging from the ages of 18 to 24. And me and that team would then go out to states like Utah, Arizona, Texas, Colorado, and Kansas, and all these places to do all kinds of different projects. So during my time, I got to do work with the Habitat for Humanity in San Antonio. I then got to work with an elementary school here in Denver. And then I worked in Oklahoma, first with Indigenous Native elders, part of the United Katua Band, and then finally with a state park in another part of Oklahoma. And let me tell you, that was what I call the best and worst year of my life, mostly around the fact that I was 24, 25 at the time, leading a group of folks who were between the ages of 18 and 24. We range from folks who this is their first time leaving home, living on their own, to folks who have been through college and this isn't their first time leaving home, folks from different socioeconomic, cultural, geographical, diverse backgrounds. And so it was almost like just just a quick and fast opportunity to really get my management skills up. And I will say, I was a bad manager. I was not a good manager. And I continue to reflect on that time to inform my, evolving management style now. And, what I really learned during that time was you I went in being like, okay, if I'm just like all about the rules, if I'm a stickler and I stick to things, I was like, okay, but at least I won't be a micromanager. And so I just had all these ideals and idealisms about how to be a good manager. And, some things worked, but a lot of things didn't work. Um, I was also working with folks who were very close to my age, which was also another factor in that. And things that didn't work for me was being a stickler, being really to the rules, not being a good listener, not being flexible, and not really being there in a way that your team felt supported versus what you thought support looked like. It's about asking those questions and being really with their team and always going back to like, okay, what is my mission and values around this work? And then that also translates into how I want to work with this team. And so I really left that experience feeling like, um, man, like I could have made a lot of different choices. And really glad I had this experience because that was such a major cornerstone of how it informed my future experiences with managers and as a manager. So then right out of AmeriCorps, I started my very first full-time nonprofit job. Um, and it was really an experience of me having to navigate a space that I didn't have many mentors or I didn't have parents who had similar experiences who could be really guiding me along. But for me, I was just so excited to get a job in nonprofit. We heard words like passion work. For me, this work meant a lot to me, and it still means a lot to me. I was working to serve a community that reflected similar experiences that I had grown up with and continue to experience as an adult. I really valued the mission and the values of the organization. Um, but you step in and it's sort of like, man, am I really doing what I thought I was going to be doing? So it looked like I was looking at the mission, I was looking at the values, I was looking and doing the work that we're putting out to the external community. But then I looked in the inside, internally in the organization and our team, and saw that, oh, they're actually not reflecting those same mission and values to the staff. Sure, there were some things like trying to continuously improve our benefits as much as I can. I think a really big thing, what I call a huge guilt factor that exists in nonprofit, that also Movies and Melissa covered, is about the fact that uh, nonprofits still heavily rely on grant money, donors, whether it's individual donors, major donors. And so I really went into the nonprofit world just being like, well, I'll most likely never get a raise. I'll most likely not get high pay, but at least I'm doing something that I love because you just never knew if the money was ever going to dry out or if you're going to end up in the red. But my experience, while that is true and remains true for a lot of organizations, what I also did realize was that sometimes the money just wasn't being spent well. It wasn't being allocated well. For example, one of the organizations I've worked for, they were so focused on wanting to grow the team that also meant everyone else's salaries were going down and everyone's salary was starting at a very low point. And so that was a huge red flag for me of like, so they're thinking more larger in numbers, but not really caring about the benefits of their staff. And in that, that also for me, not knowing, that I could be negotiating in these spaces, never being coached on how to do that. After that first nonprofit I worked for, I knew how much it meant that starting at the right salary band means so much when you get raises and promotions and how that all really adds up, especially when you have to ask, is your organization doing a COLA adjustment, which is a income-based adjustment based on the living standards of the area you're in. To me, I feel like COLA is always like a bare minimum that an organization could be providing to make sure and ensure that, that you're at least living at a very, at a suitable living wage. And also noting that those standards that are determined by the federal government and the local government are usually a little behind on what's acceptable as well. Um, so, I had the opportunity to, join a couple different webinars out there where they helped me learn how to negotiate for my salary. And every job since then, I've been able to do that. Unless it was an organization that was very clear from the beginning that they are not an organization that does salary negotiations, and they're very clear set on the band in which they indicate in their job descriptions. And so to then sort of talk about where I am today. I work at an organization that, to put out there, it's called the Management Center. We're all about management. We're actually out there trying to really support social justice leaders and folks who are really leading the charge on the ground, to really be uh, equitable and to be sustainable and really be focused on the results, both in as managers with their internal teams as well as the communities that they're serving. Really all about the capacity building on both ends. And so that I in that space have truly, truly been able to experience what great management looks like. And it has even empowered me to be a better advocate for myself. Even though I was already on that journey, being at this organization has been such a, it's sort of like you understand why you experience those things like trauma, imposter syndrome, gaslighting, because most people who joined the nonprofit space probably joined it because the work that was being done, or was at least said to be done, was super high stakes. It was very close to their heart, and something that they can't just switch a light switch when they go home and not think about it. And so it's a matter of do our this is knowing that this is the type of work that people are able to feel so much while doing it. We should be cognizant of that. We should be understanding about that. We should understand that grace is needed. We should understand people need space. People could need space away or need space in community. It's really being a good manager is about asking the questions. One of the tools that I really love that TMC shares is what we call a feedback 2x2. The way that works is generally, I would say in most spaces, when they share feedback, it's more about the manager telling their managee, these are things you're doing great. These are things you're not doing so great. Let's work on that. But do they really give you the opportunity to say what your feedback is to their management and their management style? So that 2x2 really gives that room and space for folks to be able to have that conversation and make it easy and make it like this is an opportunity. For example, with me and my manager, I make sure it's in our check-in doc every week in case that we need that space to be able to share that information. So I think that when I think about, um, I think what Melissa said earlier is like, I wish I would have known these things when I was younger. And that rings very, very true. Um, you know, so much of my experience in the nonprofit space was filled with a lot of talk, a lot of promises, but not enough action. And you really felt the feeling of like talk is cheap, but action is real. I really learned to feel and understand that I don't want to just be a checkbox, meaning I don't want to be a checkbox where they check off, okay, we gave staff training. So I don't want to be a diversity check off. I don't want to be a checkbox who they just sign off quickly to just meet the bare minimum, which to me isn't even the bare minimum. It's below that. Um, I think what's super important when you're working with your managers is getting super, super clear on your roles and responsibilities and continuously building your knowledge of not just what your roles and responsibilities are, but what your manager's roles and responsibilities are. It's getting clear on like, okay, if I am doing this on this project, what is my manager's role in supporting me or guiding me or mentoring me through this process? What is the type of help and support that my manager can provide for this? If not my manager, who are my other resources within my organization or maybe outside of my organization that could help me move my work? So those are the type of things that you definitely want to keep in mind, all on top of the different red flags that were pointed out earlier. Um, and, I think that what I hope y'all take away from this is two things. One is that the more and more questions you ask, the more and more you will find out, hopefully, but you'll also not find out anything because sometimes I just found that no one a lot of leaders that I've experienced and interacted with and been managed by, no one wants to be wrong. No one wants to feel like they're wrong. No one wants to be perceived as being wrong. So a lot of those times people start to um, do what they do to really sort of cover their butts. And so um, I would say don't get discouraged by that, but see that as a motivator to keep pushing and pushing. And at some point, you just sort of have to make the ultimate decision, is this the place for me or not? And go to your community, go to your trusted allies and have those conversations and help them ask them to help you brainstorm over like what's best for you, because your body is your temple and you should take care of it, and that very much includes your mental health. I'll close out with my second thing, which is a resource that I want to share, which is the Management Center's resource library. The Management Center, like I said earlier, they have we provide training to folks both who are managers as well as individual contributors. And we also provide coaching services for executive leaders at their organizations. But while we do all of that, we have a huge abundant resource library in which that you can go in and find out different tips. And do you need help with providing or giving feedback? Do you need help with how to project plan? Do you need help with how to have difficult conversations? Do you need help with being able to release, parse out roles and responsibilities for different projects and tasks? So there's a handy dandy search bar right on the home page. You could literally search like you would search Google, very, keywords like, you know, um, roles and responsibilities or feedback, and a ton of resources will come out. But you could also look at the resources drop down bar, and we've also categorized them into check-ins, cultural relationships, delegation, and so on. So this is a huge resource that I want to encourage y'all to check out. It's all free, it's all there. And if you want to have more interactive experience and learnings around it, feel free to check out our trainings as well. So let me pause there, and I believe I will toss it to Esmeralda.
Thank you so much, Janet. Also just wanted to say thank you so much to my co-panelists, Melissa, Louise, Janet, and we also with the Shift Press team as well for hosting this event. And I will get started on my section on workers' rights and wellness, which I'm very excited to get into. So we'll be just covering some of these topics, which are collective action tactics, potential risks, and wellness advice for workers who may be attempting to organize their workplaces. And just starting off with a little bit about me, my name is Esmeralda, and I've been working in the nonprofit sector for about 4 years, mostly experience with internships and part-time roles as a student, but been working full-time since I graduated from the University of Houston in 2023. And this all began when I was in high school back in 2021, working for a national policy advocacy organization. And since then, I've had the opportunity to work in many different nonprofits like worker centers, funders collaboratives, the Chamber of Commerce, and electoral initiatives at national, state, and local levels, as well as other places. But presently, I work on the communications team at Uri Juntos, which is an immigrant justice organization based in Houston with the focus on language justice, meeting people where they are and organizing a world that works for all of us, regardless of status. And from here, we'll get started. Um, the just wanted to say that, like many nonprofit employees, especially younger workers, I've experienced the same struggles, undergoing predatory hiring practices, enduring environments that grind passion for movement into indifference, and making only enough to scrape by. It is no lie that nonprofit sectors, especially advocacy nonprofits, come with a set of unique challenges, but you are not alone. All workers deserve environments where they feel not only safe, but also fulfilled. So, our first topic I wanted to cover a little bit was regarding collective action to consider before, during, and after workplace exploitation. So just to touch a little bit on what we'll be going into, before, our overarching theme is building awareness and infrastructure, examples being knowing your rights and also knowing your risks, which is also really important, documenting norms and the culture at your workplace, building solidarity internally and externally, and creating safe communication channels for you and your coworkers to talk on. During, the theme is organizing and speaking up, and we'll talk about naming your issues together, documentation and testimony, moving it up and engaging your community, and considering direct actions. And then after workplace exploitation, we'll talk a little bit about rebuilding and recovering. So debriefing and reflecting in your workplace, pushing for structural change and recovery. So before, building awareness and infrastructure. You want to start with documenting norms and cultures. So you want to engage your coworkers to document policies, unfair practices, and just kind of getting a sense of your workplace culture from the beginning when you start working somewhere or when things start to feel a little off, but you can't really tell what's going on. These documents will be really helpful in a later to form the basis for actions or a case. Then you want to really get to know your rights as a worker in the state of Texas and also get to know your risks, especially individual ones. If you are someone maybe with a child who you need to financially support or someone you're taking care of, maybe your workplace is a little more hostile and you're a little more afraid of retaliation. This is something to definitely take into consideration. So workers should have an understanding of how at-will employment, retaliation protections, and whistleblower laws work locally, as well as federally, obviously. And you want to assess the risk for each employee and the workplace for which you're organizing. After that, you want to create safe communication spaces. So start internal group chats, signal groups, or private Slack channels where workers can just kind of candidly discuss working conditions. This is really before a more formal sense of exploitation. So you just want to talk kind of water cooler talk where you stand by the water cooler and you're like, oh, my boss today got me working extra. What's up with that? Um, so this is something a little more casual and in a way creates a sense of connection and trust with the people you work with. And then you want to take time for informal chats. Those are really, really important and kind of, again, you gain a sense of trust and companionship with your coworkers. This one's a really big one. You want to build solidarity. So create a safe space for discussion, take your time to meet, share your frustrations with each other, and build connections with one another. At this point, you want to share your experience with your coworkers and build a collective awareness of those who feel similarly. When you're being exploited, I mean, work in itself is extremely isolating. You want to express to other people and kind of gain a sense that what you're experiencing doesn't exist in a vacuum. These are conditions that exist to other people at your workplace, maybe other workplaces like yours. Um, and you kind of want to gain like a similar understanding of like what the vibe is, what's going on, what is it that feels wrong. And then secondly, after that, you want to explore your options for outcomes. So once you have established a group of people who feel similarly or have a similar goal in mind, discuss your shared goals and consider actions like talking to management, filing complaints, or contacting a union if possible. This is kind of where you really hash out what it is. If you had an ideal workplace, what would you want out of this place? Would you want more paid time off? Would you want a higher raise, better benefits, a hybrid or remote work policy? So this is kind of the place to hash it out. And then you also want to reach out to trusted community members like attorneys, unions, or worker centers for support. And now we're getting into the juicy part, the during. Um, so you want to name your issue together. Take time to put a name to your exploitation. And this, again, can feel really isolating, but you want to use active and collective language. So understanding that this is not me feeling overwhelmed, this is wage theft, or this is harassment, or it is they're stealing time from me. You really want to frame it in a way that makes you feel secure about what it is you're experiencing and identify where folks may be blaming themselves for systemic issues. Like I mentioned earlier, work in itself can be very isolating and it can be very easy to blame yourself for these issues you may be feeling. Um, one of them being burnout. If an organization is really grinding its employees down to their gears, folks may feel like they're less resilient than other people who may seem to be keeping on better, but these are actually directly caused by poor management or the environment in which you work in. So I find that to be really, really important, kind of really putting a name and an action to what is going on. And when the issues have a name, this is when you really want to come together and determine collective goals and solutions to your issues. Um, maybe having a better work-life balance or being able to keep work at work. This is really when you want to create your demands for what it is that will resolve the workplace exploitation and these issues you've been having. And then after that, you want to really start organizing and collecting your documentation and taking testimony, writing down your own testimony, your own experiences of what it's like to work there and the issues you've been having. Beginning a shared archive where workers can log abuses, overwork, toxic management patterns, and more. Um, this is also be a good place to upload photos, upload videos, emails, if you've had hostile conversations, kind of keeping a log, and this is where it would go. And you want to keep detailed, dated notes on communication, tasks, or retaliatory behaviors. The more details you can have for this section, the better, just because it will help you set up your case and make it more airtight in a way. My next step is to move it up. You want to contact your board of directors with grievances, make demands, talk to them about what's been going on, and kind of a path that the board of directors can go on, especially if your issue is with leadership who is higher on the chain of command. And then for increased pressure, you want to share. This is pretty popular. Share what's been going on with community members, journalists, people who you work with, and more. And then in this next slide, we'll go into direct actions that you can take and want to consider. So after taking time to assess the risks involved with your workplace and your coworkers, it's really important that you consider direct action for your demands. And this can look different for every workplace and every person, depending on their abilities and their personal risk assessment, but these can include open letters, public statements, walkouts or strikes, taking coordinated time off, work to rule, so kind of working just based on your job description, not going outside of your scope and working the hours that were designated on the contract that you signed if you signed one, quiet quitting, media campaigns, which we just talked about before, and many, many more. But these are some of the more used ones among the nonprofit world that have been proven to be pretty effective. And then you want to channel your organizing, very importantly, into collective bargaining, which is where your workplace will present your collective demands to address the injustice. And then the after. So this is where we will kind of debrief and reflect. So you want to hold space for what happened, make note of what worked, what didn't work, how to protect potential future workers, and kind of letting things sit and see if they're working for your workplace. And then you want to really create a push for structural change. So advocate in your workplace for stronger and quicker accountability. Potentially advocate for unionization in your organization if that's a possibility for your workplace, funder oversight, board oversight, or more. And this is also a place where you can create structural change by sharing your experience, letting other people know that they're not alone and that victories in the workplace, especially in nonprofit fields, are possible. I think so often we see worker strikes and the labor movement in so many different fields that it kind of feels like there's really no place for like worker organizing and like nonprofit, especially with this narrative that this is passion work, that you should be grateful to have a job that kind of feeds your soul, something like that. So in this way, I think we can really challenge the norms of working, the norms of nonprofit, the nonprofit sector, and others by being very open and transparent about what this looks like and how this impacts all of us. And then lastly, recovery. You want to acknowledge a difficult experience that your workplace just went through. It's really important to hold space for each other to reflect and heal. The workplace you had and you came into is not the same as it was anymore. And it's very valid to grieve that place you had, even if it wasn't necessarily the best place. And especially if it took a lot out of you and your coworkers and your community to create this change that you had. At the end, you kind of get this like sigh of relief and this sense that you can breathe again. Another way to recover is taking time off of work. If you have any paid time off accumulated, any sick days, just kind of taking a step away from the workplace can really help you, in a way, recharge and come back if you're interested in coming back or to continue on your journey. And lastly, seeking mental health support. That is really, really important, especially given how stressful all of this can be, how anxiety inducing, and the physiological impacts of kind of workplace anxiety and financial instability, given the state of the economy right now. And these are some potential risks to keep in mind when you're considering organizing direct action. Although we would all love to really stick it to the man and give it our all, the reality is that there aren't as many protections as we'd like for workers who are organizing in their workplace. So risk levels vary vastly by workplace and by employee. So this is very important to take at a personal level when you're assessing what your plan is in the future. But some of these include termination. Given Texas is an at-will state, employers can fire workers for almost any reason or no reason at all, as long as it's not explicitly illegal. So one of these being discrimination on the basis of sex, of sexual orientation, race, religion. So for any reason, pretty much other than that, you can be terminated. The second one being retaliation. So you may be able to keep your role, but workers may be demoted, reassigned, isolated, or fired with excuses like performance or organizational restructuring, maybe financial problems, things like that, as a way to kind of keep you low. And retaliation for organizing is technically illegal under the National Labor Relations Act but enforcement is really, really slow, and protections can be weak in practice, especially if things are moving so fast. This may not be the best path or course for you. Third of which being legal. Some nonprofits, especially bigger ones with more name recognition or bigger budgets, may threaten legal action, such as suing for defamation, where they claim that you and said things that weren't true and it negatively impact the reputation of this organization, a breach of confidentiality, or fiduciary duty violations, even if claims are weak. They will send you notices like this, cease and desist, to try to intimidate you and get you to stop organizing your workplace or sending out more information about what this workplace actually is and how they operate. The fourth one is a smear campaign. Nonprofits may use their progressive or mission-driven image to discredit workers, claiming organizers are divisive, disruptive, misaligned with the mission, and harm future job prospects, especially in the same nonprofit ecosystem. In this way, if you work at an LGBT rights organization and you get in trouble for organizing your workplace, if they say you're misaligned with the values of the organization, people are going to think you are homophobic or transphobic, which is really scary and leads to our last bullet point, which is blacklisting. Whistleblowers or organizers may be subtly blacklisted by other organizations or funders, especially if the sector is particularly small or very tight-knit, where people get to know each other pretty well. Um, it's easy for people who are higher up to really get their say in before the dust really settles on the employee, the organizer, and it prohibits this employee from really using their skills to the best of their abilities to make a living, which is extremely heartbreaking. So these are just some of the risks to keep in mind. I know this is a long list and it's scary, but I think a very important point to make is that when you are doing this work collectively, that it is a lot harder to, terminate an entire staff of people. Like, how are you going to terminate all of your staff and begin anew? Um, so this is where it's really important to kind of have that solidarity that we talked about in the beginning, kind of making sure everyone's on the same page, and standing up for one another when we witness retaliation or smear campaigns, being able to really fight back on those and take matters into our own hands on this part. And this is just kind of a notice. A better workplace is possible, and it is possible in Texas. Collective worker bargains can lead to tangible wins for all employees. Nonprofit organizations across the state, like the Texas Civil Rights Project, Move Texas, Workers Defense Project, Every Texan, and many more across Texas, have officially recognized unions and are working every day to turn their workplace into places that respect their staff and work for them as well. But a union is not mandatory to organize your workplace. Just anecdotally, at my workplace at Urijuntos, workers organized to demand a week of paid time off where the office shuts for the wellness of all at Urijuntos, including an annual stipend for all. Together, we make the annual united decision of when these 4 weeks are during the year, and it came thanks to the efforts and the dedication of the staff who really felt that this week of paid time off that happened once a quarter, 4 times a year, was really necessary for the well-being of the organization. Like I said, these wins are made possible thanks to the dedication of the employees across Texas who refuse to allow injustice to continue in their workplace. And for my last section, I'll talk a little more on wellness advice for before, during, and after workplace exploitation. Beginning with before, strengthening your foundation, identifying allies, creating safety nets, just finding the support for yourself when you can feel things kind of not feeling right. During, by protecting yourself, listening to your body, setting boundaries, and to avoid obsessing, which is the hardest one, but we will get into that in a little bit. And then after, your recovery and rebuilding once again, being able to take a breath and restore agency and joy. So, worker wellness for before. You really want to create a safety net. Start an emergency fund if possible. I know in this economy, things are so much more expensive. Wages are stagnant. So, if you are able to put away a couple of dollars, as much as you can, that would be really, really important. Researching affordable legal aid is also a big one. Something that you and your coworkers can afford, maybe something pro bono if possible. And I didn't put this one on here, but maybe creating like mutual aid nets. So having kind of like a GoFundMe ready if you feel that termination may be in the cards and there are folks who might need more financial support than others. Um, Kind of having that on the ready to be able to support people in this really hard time of need. Um, you also want to identify allies, so make a note of coworkers or board members, community partners, journalists, people who work at other organizations, maybe folks who have gone through similar things that you can trust. During, you really want to listen to your body. Exploitation brings a lot of anxiety, a lot of chronic anxiety, which manifests itself with symptoms like insomnia, stomach pain, numbness, nervousness all the time. So it's very important to be in tune with your body. Secondly, don't obsess. Documenting workplace issues can help, but please be sure to set boundaries. When you are uploading things and talking all the time, it's really easy to relive every detail all over again, which in a way like continues to scratch at the scab. And although it's hard to say not to obsess because we're at work for such a long time and it dictates a lot of our lives, this is kind of the time where you really want to leave work at work. And then after, you want to take a breath. I mentioned earlier mourning the place that you had, mourning the burnout, gaslighting, or moral injury. It's easy to kind of feel attached to these things, especially if you're someone who's really into routine or familiarity. You also would like to take time off if you can. And then that kind of goes into restoring agency and joy. You want to re-engage with joy outside of work. Remind yourself that you are more than your labor. You are more than what you contribute to make a living, to continue to eat and experience. Immerse yourself in things that make you happy. Art, music, nature, movement. Um, Again, anything that reminds you that you're still alive. And that is all I have for this webinar today. I wanted to end by saying our collective power as workers make us strong. We are more than our labor, and we are more than what we contribute to our workplaces. No worker deserves to be exploited, especially not in the name of a movement. And together we keep one another safe. And down here I have my Instagram handle, which is probably the best way to reach me, where I'd be more than happy to talk about my experience or to give more advice about this sort of issue. But I'm very happy to turn it over to Uyosa, I think, for the Q&A portion.
Thank you so much, Esmeralda. That was strong. So what we're gonna do right now, I'm gonna invite all the panelists to either turn their videos on. What we're gonna do is we're gonna go through all these different points of Q&A. Y'all put so much in the Q&A area, so we really appreciate it. I'm gonna first remind folks that yes, this is being recorded and the recording will be shared out tomorrow. So just, as far as worker wellness, I'm not working after this. So this will be up tomorrow, not today. And if you registered, you definitely get that via email. I'll try to do some posting on Instagram so people can see it that way too. Another note is that I saw a comment that Texas is a one-party consent state in regards to recording conversations. So if you ever feel threatened in any way, shape, or form, or you're going to be going into a conversation in which you feel like you may be gaslit later, you are welcome to record the conversation without letting the other party know that you're doing so. The other note was there was a question about job banks. I want to ask everyone to drop in the chat if you know of any job banks. Louise has already given an amazing job bank through the answering on the entered area of the Q&A. I'm gonna also send those via email tomorrow, and Louise also just dropped it in the chat again. We will, as panelists, be looking as well, and we'll give that as well through an email. Thank you for y'all who are commenting right now. I'm gonna go in a very weird order of things. So the first one that I want to go to is actually this one that seems um could be can go to anyone. The comment was fighting for a better wage at a nonprofit is nice, but it might suck that everyone else earns the same while you are the only one asking for more. Everyone else would be taken advantage of except you. So how do you collectively bargain without getting fired first or strengthening a union, especially in Texas? Esmeralda, you talked a lot about this. I wanted to encourage you, if you have any more thoughts about this, especially with the type of landscape that we're in right now, if you have any more thoughts to this question.
Yeah, I mean, this totally depends on the kind of bargaining that you're seeking to do and how much support you can really gather. Um, to be honest, negotiating your wage is easier to do solo, but like if you wanted to kind of collectively up the like standard base pay for everyone, that would be a lot harder to do just like one person by itself. So ideally you would have at least like a small group of people who are able to talk about, better pay for all workers all around. Um, but yeah, I think the most effective way to collectively bargain without getting fired first is to really keep things very, very quiet as you can. Only talk to people initially, especially if you're in a really big workplace, people who have already kind of talked like, oh, fuck work, am I right? Like, talk to them first. If they know anyone else, kind of keep your circle very tight and close knit, because if you work in a place that is a little stricter and they hear about, this really small kind of ragtag team of people trying to organize, it's so much easier to kind of like pinpoint them and kind of like really get at them versus having this like moderately sized established team that you can really build on. I keep thinking like they can't fire all of us. What are they going to do about that? They can't fire 70% of you, but they can fire like 25% of you if, your bargaining team is kind of small or word gets out to people who are not very nice people at your workplace. So that is definitely something to keep in mind when you are trying to really bring people together, is like, what is my goal number of workers? How can I reach that? Can I reach that? And what demands do we have that might unite other people that may be disinterested? And then once you have this like group, you're able to like, I guess, leverage your power more in that way. I'm not sure if anyone else, Louise, Janet, Melissa, have anything to contribute to that.
Yeah, I thanks for sharing all that, Esmeralda. I plus one the be on the lookout and hear things people are saying like fuck word or whatever, and so I would look out for patterns as well, because who knows, there could be a plan. I don't know. People are scary and weird, and these are scary times. And so but I want to take a step even further back to even getting to the collective bargaining stage of really anything is um be transparent within your circles. So be transparent with your coworkers, be transparent with your teams. Like, you want to build that culture of, if your organization doesn't have a culture of transparency, and if you're leading a team, cultivate that, culture of transparency, at least within your team, so that there's at least a growing subset of people who are talking to each other. Share how much you're making with each other. Share how, if you negotiated at any point, share any techniques you have. That's why resources like Glassdoor and things like that are great, because at least folks can post anonymously, but to get like really, first person experiences and examples is always helpful. I think, a huge I want to like talk about, gossip, right? Like people hear the word gossip and just like have like a reaction to it. But there's this podcast called Normal Gossip that I'm like totally promoting. Love that podcast. But the question they ask the guests all the time is, what's your relationship with gossip? And I've through hearing other people's answers have evolved how I feel about gossip as well. And gossip is important. Gossip is so crucial to the work we do. It's so crucial in how information moves. And as long as your intentions are purely, I want to help people, do it. Gossip your ass off and share the information you have. Like, I want to know if my friend knows this place I'm trying to apply for is a good place or a bad place. I want to know if this team I might be trying to get in within my organization or promotion, do I want to work for that manager? Or is this a place that have they had attempts of collective bargaining before? Have they shown disinterest in unionizing? Like, you want to collect that information for your safety. It's so important that you're asking the questions, creating your allies to protect yourself and others.
All right, thank y'all. And Melissa, I want to bring you into this next question. Well, so let's go even further back to the very beginning. There's a question about what does proper transparency in a nonprofit look like? What are some good things we've seen? And after Melissa, if y'all have any other thoughts of what that looks like, please do.
Yeah, so I think this one is like a multifaceted area, right? So for me, it's like five major areas within the organization. The first one being financial transparency. So like we had said in our op-ed, right? You can look at the IRS website to see the 990s that nonprofits should be submitting. Also, just regular financial statements and annual reports. The only thing I do suggest on that one is be a little patient with nonprofits because, December is usually the close of the year for a lot, and many of them won't start reporting until January, possibly the latest February. Nonetheless, do look out for that. Do they have a clear budget allocation? Is there donor transparency? Unless there's anonymity requested, most of the times donors don't mind if they're being acknowledged or even highlighted within the organization. The next one is like mission and impact clarity. What are the clear mission and goals of the organization? Are they reporting like what is their reporting on outcomes? How are they measuring the impact that they are doing within the community? And then are they acknowledging their challenges within some of those reports? The third one is governance transparency, right? Like the board structure and leadership. Have they disclosed the names of the board members? One thing that I do say with this is that you often ask for like certain contact information. However, because some organizations are currently getting targeted, I do give a little bit of leeway with that just because of the fact that they are being targeted and we don't want harm happening to not only like board members, but also staff members. So if you do see that, I'm not going to say like bring it as a high alert, but just make a small note of it and you can always ask questions. As someone who has written bylaws, every organization should have a conflict of interest policy. Is that within their bylaws? What about their meeting minutes or like the decisions on some of the major initiatives or changes that they have within the organization? The fourth thing is like ethical and inclusive practices. We talked about DEI. Are they including any of that DEI within their data? Do they have transparent hiring or compensation practices? Are they publishing salaries? Even for even on those 990s, there is going to be some sort of transparency when it comes to that. Is there a good method for grievance and feedback? And then accessible information would be like the fifth one. Is it easy to navigate the website that they have? what information do they actually have on their website, like the mission, the impact statement, the financials, contact information. How easy is that accessible? And then regular communication would be like one of the last bullet points under that, accessible information. How's your social media looking like? You know, are you giving out newsletters on a regular basis? How are you keeping supporters updated within the organization? So for me, like those are the 5 big heavy hitters when it comes to transparency within a nonprofit organization. And I'm going to invite anybody else on the panel to mention anything that they feel is important.
For sake of time, I'll jump in just 2 things. Yeah, I feel very much in line with that note about certain things aren't even public anymore. Shift Press, our executive board and editor pool is not public right now, unless people ask, just because of so many attacks that are taking place. And then another thing, just one more thing on this is one thing I've noticed and found out only recently is not every nonprofit worker is encouraged to go to board meetings, which is so weird to me because I've only been in nonprofit spaces where that was. So I guess I was very fortunate. But yeah, if they're not encouraging you or even allow you to go to board meetings, that's something to bring up and ask about. Um, let's move on to the next question, and I'm gonna kind of put both of these questions in. And Louise, please do take it first. So the first question is, hi, I currently work with lots of amazing youth that are close to my age, college students. I've had my fair share of being put in difficult situations where I've had to navigate the line between professionalism and also becoming a friend in order to get work done. Is there any advice or words you can share that can help put boundaries that are beneficial to the both of us?
Yeah, no, this is a really good question because I think the truth is when you're engaged in nonprofit work, you really do build bonds forged in fire like with each other often, right? Especially if you're in shared circumstances where y'all are all getting paid low wages and management is equally horrible to everybody, or it's just but I think especially I just think back to some experiences I had where I would work with a lot of like interns, some of who were high school and college students and whatnot. Unfortunately, they were also exposed to some of the bad parts of our organization. And I think I would get protective of them sometimes. And I think one so here's would be my practical advice. One is like be very firm about boundaries. I think like it's very natural to want to be friends with someone, especially when you're sharing over a difficult experience. But at the end of the day, especially if you're in a position of power over this person, you cannot be this person's friend. Just straight up, you have to be firm with that. You can't be that person's friend. Even if you're at a peer level, I think be mindful, like about how you're engaging with each other, and also just like what is. I mean, I think another thing is too is like, uh, are y'all just uh is your workplace relationship just venting to each other about like how everything sucks, or is it are you actually thinking about wanting to do something? And I'm not saying that's easy, but I am saying I think sometimes what happens, and this has been the case in a lot of workplaces I've been in, is like I think it's just the thing everybody wants to do is vent and complain about stuff, but none of us want to take the step to do something about it. And I think I just want to be mindful of like maybe you, especially if you're the person with more power over these students, like you're working with college students, that you have to be the one sometimes to be like, hey, let's redirect your anger here. Or let's think about what we can do about this. Like, oh, y'all are getting like say they're interns and they're not getting stipends. Let's come together and do something about it, right? Um, yeah, so I think my quick points would be, especially for the sake of time, is like you need boundaries no matter what you think. You're not friends. Like especially be mindful if you have power over them. And I think like also just like you don't have to stop being human with someone just because you're their manager. And I think Janet or Melissa can speak more to this, but I think you also at the it's a hard balance, but I think like you really you have to remember like not to get too lost in the terrible sauce that is the working conditions of your work sometimes, if that makes sense. Yeah, I'll pass it to Janet.
Yeah, I'll just quickly add to emphasize Louise's point about to stay human and be human because that's what you are. And, I think that, eh, if I want to encourage the being the explicit around the boundaries that you have. So, if your reportee is coming to you just to vent about something, it was a good example, is like you want to like stop them there before it goes further and be like, hey, I hear that you're frustrated about something. I want to be a good manager and a support system for you. So I want to know if this is going to be like a solutions oriented conversations. Is this you trying to get advice from me on how to like navigate through this? Because I want to make sure that I'm here to support you, not just to vent about what's going on. It's sort of just be clear about why you're creating these boundaries, and just also and still at the same time show them that you care, like you're literally here to support them in whatever way you can, and also be transparent on how you can't be supportive, because you as a person, you're a manager, but you have a manager and a manager and a manager, and so it's sort of that effect of like you being honest with like, okay, I hear this. I think these are some things I could do something about. These are some things like I just know we can't, but I'm going to try to see if I can keep advocating for it and just, have those conversations. I think it's also a matter of building a culture where like your folks do feel like they can trust you with actual things they need support on. I think I always joke, but it's not really a joke, but a lot of good management skills are very much related to good relationship skills, whether it's a platonic relationship or a romantic relationship. It's like the same way you would treat your partner and care about them is relatively the same way you would treat your employee and care about them. And so it's really about being clear with communication, being explicit. I like to tell people being direct with care is really important. You can still be direct, you can still be clear, but show that there's care and grace and love behind what you're saying. Um, so yeah, I think for me it's always about and that everyone is unique and different. And you want to know what those unique and different things are. Is it that they need support when it comes to neurodivergent needs? Is it because they have physical disability needs? It's those things you want to learn about your folks to build those relationships and still maintain boundaries as a leader.
Thank you so much for that, Janet. That this also answers that comment. Someone who said that they had a challenge they face in nonprofit sector with is that the personal relationship management with staff or partners, so they refuse to acknowledge your problematic behaviors because of how close they are, and you're left not wanting to speak up about it. And they've had folks get fired because they reported it. And management protected the other person, right? So I guess that is in the same vein of the discussion we're having. Um, I do want to note that someone mentioned that the Peer Defense Project hosts free legal consultations and advice for young folks, and that in a case someone else said, in case you are having some problems during the negotiation process for your job, or you see that it's very, very obvious that they don't have the money, you could consider asking for more PTO instead of salary, right? So that's another thing to consider. Some lightning round questions. First one goes to Janet. Feels like this presentation is as similar as when folks warn um, of working anywhere, right? So how is this different from being different from any nonprofit? Any differences between a bad nonprofit and a bad business?
Yeah, of course. My clear cut answer is there shouldn't be a difference. If you're experiencing any of these things in any industry, any sector, any type of company, you should identify them in a similar way. I do think if there is the slightest difference is that the abuse of people's survival emotions and passions is tends to be a bit higher in nonprofit spaces, mostly because people do tend to work for missions and values that they have a strong connection to. So I think that's sort of the added layer as to why it's a bit more challenging, and people might be even more hesitant to say something. I think that because sometimes folks are like, oh, like but the organization says they represent, peace and love, but I'm not feeling that peace and love. But is it Am I right? Am I wrong? Am I going to say something that might ruin this organization's reputation, affect their funding? Am I going to, do something that might mess up something that's actually good? And maybe I'm just feeling weird about it. It's a lot of that gaslighting, informing the imposter syndrome, informing the trauma, and it's a lot of that happens quite a bit. And like I said before, like these are same things. If this is happening in your relationships, run away, right? So these things are so applicable to many things, and we want to be cognizant that some folks are, might enter certain workspaces for very unique reasons, and some again with nonprofit specifically, it tends to be more of that emotional, passionate, motivator pieces that folks are there for.
Before we answer this last question, I want to remind folks if they want to stay tuned with us, subscribe to our newsletter. I'll be dropping a link to that below. If you feel really, really like, oh my goodness, this is amazing and I want more of this, please do donate or tell other people with deeper pockets than you to donate as well, so we can continue giving free to low cost content like this. With that, I will give this last question and we can go wild on it because it is quite the question. Um, my nonprofit had a 50% reduction in staff due to pulling of federal and state funds due to our program with trans youth. Do y'all have any resources, plans, connections for any system-wide organizing across the nonprofit sector to fight back? For example, a general strike, but for nonprofits. There are so many issues right now that impact all of our nonprofit missions: immigrant raids, environmental rights, public school defunding, and more. It seems like we should all be organizing together. Who wants to take that first? Go ahead.
I think for me, the biggest thing here is collaboration, especially with, first and foremost, props to you for engaging with trans youth. The work is absolutely needed right now, and it is very important for you to definitely be in this game. So whoever submitted this question, just know that I am here with you. I see you, and I'm pretty sure my other panelists do as well. But right now, for me, the thing I would say is you're right. We should be organizing together, and I would implore you to definitely contact other queer-based organizations. I know here in Houston, like we have a lot of great organizations, but think broader, go statewide, go national wide. And the best thing to do is to collaborate with them to see what next moves need to happen. There are still some funders who are funding queer-based organizations. And that also gives you an opportunity to ask for the public for funding. And I understand right now, this economy is hurting our pockets right now, but $1, $2 will make an absolute difference. But for me, the biggest thing, and especially for nonprofits, because really there's not a nonprofit I don't know that isn't getting hit or torn up by some kind of administrative whatever. The best thing is to really come together and ensure that you are having this discussions, because it could be that yes, you have one idea, but then maybe somebody at, I don't know, Tent or ACLU can have a different idea, and you just come together and simply collaborate on it. That is my you know that is the way I think that I would go, talking to others to see like, hey, what's down the pipeline? What exactly are we going to be doing it? Are we going to be doing like some kind of, I don't want to say protest, but are we going to be doing some kind of demonstration showing the public that, hey, we're still here, we're still queer, we are very much needed in this community and in the space, and we are very much alive. It's June, it's Pride, make it known. And those are genuinely my words to you. I definitely would love to connect with you, whoever you are. So please feel free to email me.
Any other last comments? Go ahead, Janet.
Yeah, thank you. I'll quickly add, big question. I took a few breaths because it's a real question. And I think I really wish I had a really strong answer for you, and I don't. I think Melissa's answer was fantastic. What I'll add is I think there are times when nonprofit organizations are, I mean, well, it's not their time. Nonprofits are always having to compete for dollars with each other. And it's not because y'all hate each other. It's not because, there's some bad blood. Maybe sometimes there is. But, most of the time it's because there's so many limited funders. There's only so many buckets you can pull from. So this is a real big time for y'all to come together. Maybe it's applying for a grant together and not singularly. Maybe it's talking about doing collaborative work that could end up giving you bigger dollars. This is maybe about the same way y'all are organizing for your causes, organize for this cause, the cause that DEI is getting attacked, the cause that nonprofit dollars are being even more whittled down, federal funding is getting cut. I sit on a board right now where federal funding it took a huge impact on the organization. And so it's um think of it as purely like we are all in the trenches together with this. So find your trench mates, find your friends, and putting the organizing efforts in that way together and make it loud. Really, I when I saw that the federal workers in DC were all organizing and coming out every week and really standing up for their colleagues and their mission and what they do, like that was powerful. And I think nonprofits could truly be doing the same thing. And this, I think so many funders took a few steps back when they heard all these different, limitations. But there's still funders out there who want to be in the trenches with you. So once those are identified, call your other partner organizations. Put something together, make it strong, and make it in a way that even the funders feel safe supporting it, because I'm sure they want to, but they're limited. So that would be what I'd like to share.
Lovely. So thank y'all for coming through. Look out for an email tomorrow afternoon. We really are so appreciative that you came through. When you get this recording, please do share it to as many folks as possible. Share the piece to as many folks as possible. Maybe it's a way that you start the conversation with your colleagues, right? With all that, I hope you have a great night. Stay hydrated through this summer heat. Thanks for coming through, y'all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good night.